Hello and welcome to the Leaders Lane podcast. I'm your host, Monica Cade. Today we're talking innovation and adventure with my guest, Dr. Robert Yonover. And he's a PhD geochemist, volcanologist, big wave surfer, and inventor. He's created life-saving ocean tech backed by Darpa and the US military. And he's pretty much turned the ocean into his own laboratory. So you've probably seen him on Shark Tank, CNN, and the Discovery Channel. And today you'll get to hear the story behind the sea rescue. So I know you're itching to find out more. So let's welcome him to the chat. Thanks for joining me today, Rob.
My pleasure, Monica. Glad to be here. Thank you.
I thought before we dive into, no pun intended, the sea rescue.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about how your leadership journey started. Did you start your career studying? How did you become an inventor?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, my parents focused on arts, craft, and creativity, and I combined and travel also, and nature. All that was going on. But then in school, I realized I'm good at science and math. So those kind of kept coalescing till I started doing well in school, and people started paying me to get further degrees. I got paid to get a master's degree and work on a gold deposit in Nova Scotia, Canada. Then I got the ultimate, which was an offer to come to Hawaii to work on volcanoes, and actually submarine volcanoes in particular. I got to work on the Galapagos ocean floor lavas, and I got to go down in the 𝐬𝐵𝐿 submersible 2 miles down in the ocean, which was quite an experience for someone that's a little claustrophobic. It's the same sub that found the Titanic. So all the time, though, my father was a child of the Depression, and we didn't have that much money, and he always taught us to, build it yourself, fix it yourself, never buy anything new. And that's been always in my mind. So we were always problem solving and we were always innovating. And every time I'd see a problem, I'd want to solve it. And somehow being a surfer and a volcanologist and all these things where I'm in nature deeply, survival became a theme. So if there was something that I have a great imagination. So if I feel like I'm about to die, if something happens, if a couple things go wrong, I'm in trouble. So how do you work your way out of it, given the minimal tools? And I read a lot about survival stories, and they always say the same thing, which is you work with what you have in your raft or in the mountains. But they say the number one tool for survival is your brain. So you kind of have to wait a second and then think about it and then try to fashion a solution. So I'm kind of a weird background because I'm science and art and creativity. So not many people do that, and I wish there were more because, I think it's a good mix, and I'm able to communicate too. I think a lot of scientists and engineer types can't really talk well and translate. I consider myself a translator, so I can speak high-level stuff, low-level stuff. I have friends that are PhDs, I have friends that are drug addicts, I have friends that are homeless, I have friends that are millionaires. And in the surfing world, you're always encountering all kinds of people. So I'm used to talking quickly and going to whatever level and trying to explain things quickly and efficiently. And it helps sort your ideas out, be able to explain them to people. It's a lost art.
That's so cool because you're right. Most people sort of fall into like the creativity category or either, the mathematics, science, sort of, our brains are sort of wired either way.
Right.
Mine's probably more the creativity side. Like I really struggled with mathematics as a kid and I dropped it in like one of the years that you're allowed to drop it in high school.
Right.
It wasn't my strength, so I do admire people like yourself that can do both, which is pretty cool.
Well, thanks. I think it's de-emphasized in school and by parents. I think parents are always pushing their kids to be scholastic or real cerebral instead of being creative. And my parents, there were three of us, and again, they were working with tools at hand. My mom used to always say, let's spread the paper on the ground, and that meant we were going to do something. So she gave us clay or crayons or paint. So you just build something, but don't make too big of a mess. But so that was always, and it's like hands-on, also working with your hands. I think that's really important that when you're a little kid to create from your hands to your brain. Very important.
Yeah. There's a quote, and I don't know if I'm going to say it right or if I'm going to butcher it, but when they say like busy hands, quiet mind, something like that.
Yeah. Right. Well, idle hands or the devil's workshop or one of those. I know they're all, exactly. Basically engage. And one of my quests in life is to get people off their phones, which in 2007 when the Apple One came out and everyone was praising how great smartphones are. I was like the only person that said, no, these are horrible. And I was right then, and I'm right 18 years later. They're so bad for creativity because you just keep seeing images. You don't think on your own. You never get bored. You never work with materials. You're just thinking, you're just watching. You're a follower instead of a leader. And if you have idiot friends, you're watching idiot stuff, And social media can be used well if you have great friends and wise people that post interesting things. I mean, I follow it, but I have my own personal rule is if there's not Wi-Fi, I don't want to have a smartphone. You know what I'm saying? So I think scrolling should only be done in the home or office or airplane or something. But when you're with people, you and I, we should not be able to be connected in terms of Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, social media scrolling. If you're talking to someone or if you're in nature, if you're outside, you shouldn't be able to have a phone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things that I really, and I do a lot of outreach to kids, and I really try to break their habits, but it's so hard. It's so ingrained. It's a tough nut to crack. I mean, of all the things I've invented, that's the thing I wish I could really invent is a way to get kids off their phones.
It is such an interesting topic and something I'm quite passionate about too. I guess I'm on my phone a lot. I don't particularly scroll so much. I'm not much of a scroller. I use it sort of like for different things and for my business, but I can tell you my happiest moments when I'm most content is when I'm off my phone and I leave my phone and I'm out with someone doing something and not paying attention to the screen. Yeah.
Exactly. I think most people would say that, but it's the in-between times. It's hard to find those times. And now they're making the phones more resilient. I used to say, okay, we're going in the boat or the water. Your phone's going to get ruined. Don't even bring it. I'm always looking for ways to get rid of it. And here in the U.S., cell phone blockers are illegal. But I'm going to probably have one in my house one day. So when kids or grandkids come over, I can turn on a switch and no phones work. So,
yeah.
I mean, you're not supposed to do it in public, but I'm sure. I mean, in your own home, you're allowed to do it.
I don't know what it's like over where you live, but I imagine it's very similar. When you drive down the road, you can often see two people at a bus stop or just on the street, and they're not even connecting. They're looking at their phones, but they're standing together. And it's kind of funny when you look at it. It's like, or at a restaurant, like I've seen so many people, they're eating together and they're on their phones and not connecting at all. It's like they're photographing their food.
Exactly. It's horrible. And that's bad enough. But the secondary loss is the ability to communicate, to look someone in the eye, to carry on a conversation, to ask a question. All these tools, which are so basic, especially in the entrepreneurial world. If you come up with something and you want to promote it, you have to be able to get in front of people, shake someone's hand, impress them. I met a kid the other day and he wanted to do a little outreach with me I did outreach on him and just kind of mentor him a little. He's a aspiring inventor in the Coast Guard. And he was really struck me. The guy could look in my eye. Even it was virtual on Zoom, but it was so rare to see a kid in his 20s that could do that. And I think that is really a secondary loss of these phones. It's a social skill loss. But you're right. People text each other in the room instead of talk to each other. It's horrible.
I know.
But,
yeah.
It's money. It's all driven by money. And to me, the worst thing of all is these phones and apps are just making people fatter and lazier. I mean, you just push a button, it'll do something for you. Even AI. I hate AI. I'm against the whole thing. Just keep pushing a button. And kids are so lazy now. It'll write my report. It'll answer my question. Yes, the computer is awesome and Google. Yes, you have a whole library, but you don't use it that way. You're not doing research. You're cheating in many ways. You're cheating yourself, though. And it's, I don't want to rant too much on that.
No, it's very interesting. And I'm even noticing, my career up until this point has been as a writer. So I've been noticing the effects of AI. And have I used it? Yes, I have. But it has been interesting how I'm noticing I'm not even thinking the same, or I notice a difference when I'm usually like, I'll go for a walk and then I come back and I sometimes have ideas. So I write like posts or something in my notes on my phone, and that's when it
Right.
usually flows. And it's such a strange world because I really appreciate communication and words because it's just something that I love. And
Sure.
it's interesting just going to social media now, and it's like everyone now is a writer, but they use AI. And it just
Yeah.
sort of makes me feel a bit sad in a way because we've lost that, for the people that really have worked hard to create an art form out of that, it's sort of all a bit muchness, if that makes
Well,
sense.
and it's just fake. I mean, bottom line, you didn't earn it. You didn't write it. It didn't come out of your mind. Yeah, you prompted it to do something for you like a robot. And I'm a
Yeah.
writer myself, and I love writing. I love being connected from my brain to my hands to a keyboard.
Mm,
Even the phone itself, I like a keyboard because I took typing in high school. I could type 90 words
yeah.
a minute, and when you're
Yeah.
humming, and I make a little outline and I'm writing, it's like, oh my god, this is great, and you're connected, and even just the way you can write something that moves people. Not that I have ever had, but some people say that, but like Hemingway or all these great authors, Tolstoy, you read this stuff and it lasts hundreds of years, and it's still relevant to the human
Mm,
experience, and that's what's really sad is because the human experience is changing because it's so artificial now with phones and AI. It's so removed from reality, and it's the new reality. And I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man. I'm really trying to fight for the kids. I really am. I mean, I'm
mm,
an old guy. Who cares about me anymore and what I know? I can scroll. I can do whatever I want in terms of screw around if I have free time. But as I often mention to people that are trying to be entrepreneurial, that there's so many hours in the day. Don't quit your day job because people want to get their invention or innovation or company off the ground. And I always say, yeah, but it's too much pressure because you can't make that much money quick enough. It doesn't happen quickly. It happens slowly. So
yeah.
if there are 168 hours in a week and you have a 40-hour a week job and you have 40 hours a week to sleep, that still leaves you like 88 hours. So if you turn
Mm,
your phone off and work at night and weekends, there's plenty of time to start something
yeah.
in the background. And that's and again, the phones are addictive because they make them addictive. It's a dopamine. It's like junk food. You can't have one potato chip. You can't scroll one little thing. You can't Google one thing. You can't AI one little thing. It just keeps feeding you and bringing you down a path and keeps visually stimulating you. And I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for being bored. And not many people are bored anymore. And that's really, everyone thought it was so bad to be bored. We were kids. We were bored all the time, but it forced us to do stuff, think differently, think wildly. And the funny thing is, when you're older and if you're happy and content, a lot of what you did was based on your dreams and fantasies when you were a kid. I mean, I know that's what I'm doing. I'm living my fantasy. I'm living exactly how I dreamed about living when I was 15, when it all came together. I want to surf. I want to work on volcanoes. I want to solve problems. I want to be with beautiful women, all these things that eventually happen because I kept visualizing them and going for that, right? You have
Mm,
goals, and it's almost hard to find goals if people that you're following, again, the difference between a follower and a leader. And I think we should
mm,
all be leaders in our own minds. You can look at what other people are doing, but have your own identity and goals and just autonomy. And I think we're losing that.
yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is a big part of leaders lane for me. It's like I really believe that we are the leaders of our own life. And I think you beautifully said it. It's totally fine. Look to other people, draw inspiration, but lead your own life, run your own path, follow your dreams.
Right.
And you might pick up things from other people along the way, and that's great.
But I think still, ultimately, because it's so easy to push buttons and get stuff like a ride or food or an answer or a paper written, people aren't earning it. And a lot of
Yeah.
leading yourself, getting your own just autonomy and achievement in life is by earning it, by putting in the
Mm,
hours. And no one wants to earn it anymore. And that's really the problem. And whatever it is, everyone's looking for shortcuts all the time. Even pharmaceuticals, I'm going to take this pill or injection and get skinny. Why don't you just do the work and eat right and exercise? There's so little earning it. and everything is so condensed to quick. I want it quick. I want it immediate gratification. I don't want to do anything about it. I don't want to do any work. I want to just push a button or pay someone to push a button. So
yeah,
but
totally.
there are people, and I still think when I see kids, really little kids aren't like that yet. So, and that's where we have to draw inspiration and guidance from, if really, is to see little kids playing in a field and just go to a schoolyard when they have recess. It has nothing to do with phones. I mean, to a certain age. And then when they're teenagers, it's over. But I think if we act more like little kids, and even for an inventor and scientists, I think some of the best ideas are driven by minds that are very childish, and I even my inventions are very childlike, and they're simple, but in the patent world, simpler is better. The simpler the idea, the simpler way you solve a problem, the more bulletproof it is, the more impressive it is. So I think we downplay being a child and being carefree and free association and just playing and doodling and building things and getting stuck in things and getting dirty and having long-winded time where you're bored. All that stuff is really valuable. And it's too bad adults can't really do that so much.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I'd love to know then, because, you've grown up in a generation that didn't have the smartphones.
Absolutely.
And you're an inventor, and you're sort of like, you get to see both. Whereas the younger generations now, they don't know what our lives were like before the internet.
Exactly.
So what would you say to our listeners that maybe they're adults and they do want to start something new? How do they start fostering that creative muscle again?
I think, first of all, you got to turn everything off. And I go to nature and I go to my own problems. What problems can you solve? And all the inventions I've ever had was something I wanted solved. And some of them are ridiculous and stupid, but it was still a problem to me. So it's like, simplify a problem and then focus on it. Don't look at any media. Have a little pen and piece of paper or a notebook and just write things all the time. Write little notes, make little sketches. And I'd say my invention hit rate is maybe 20% are good, 80% are worthless. But you know what? I don't care. It's part of the process. And some things I've invented just, again, to solve my problems, like sunscreen. I had to get something burned off my back once, a dermatologist, and I can't reach the middle of my back. So I couldn't put sunscreen on. And I asked my friend, I don't have a beautiful woman with a bikini to put sunscreen on all the time. So we're going surfing years ago. My friend said, I'll do it. He puts it on and made me a little uncomfortable. Then he goes, can you do my back? And, he had this nasty, hairy back. I'm like, this is no fun. I got to solve this problem. So I use a little paint roller and I roll. It's so simple. It's stupid. And I still use it today. So it's a paint roller that rolls sunscreen like you're painting your back. So again, stupid idea, probably no commercial application, but it really makes me feel good. So I think we're all inventors as humans. We're survival. And we survive like in the old days in the woods. We need shelter. We need food. It's the same thing. So when you solve your own problem, you feel good about being a human. I'm a successful human. I'm autonomous. I don't need to buy something at the store. I made it myself. And even a friend of mine, I got a couple friends that have a lot of money that did really well, and they came to my house years ago, and they came on my little boat, and they said, and everything's like homemade, with all my little contraptions. And the guy said to me, haven't you bought one thing from a boat store? And I said, no. And, to him, it was a put down. To me, it was a compliment. Yeah. So it's like, so you have to just, and go for small victories. And everyone is inventing. Everyone invents their whole schedule of what you do in your day. You do things a certain way. Some of those problems you're solving might be wider appeal to like if you're having the problem, not the sunscreen roller. I'm sure that a lot of people have that same problem. You got to pick your time though. The real art of inventing is picking the winners. I don't want to get sidetracked on an invention that doesn't go anywhere because time is money. So you have to think about which is the most impactful one, which is the one I can own with patents and protect, and which is that's going to have a market. So you have to mix all that together. And then when in doubt, when I encounter a problem that I don't understand at all, I always say the same thing, which is, how would nature solve this? So Earth's been here 4 billion years, and there's a field called biomimicry, where you mimic biology, biomimicry. So even my streamer, which locates people when they're lost at sea, it's a big, long orange tail. It's so simple. It was insultingly simple to the military, but now they've approved it and like it. But it took years. But the reason it works, I don't think you can see this white bar where I'm pointing. There's little spreader bars, because that long piece of plastic wouldn't have stayed extended if it wasn't for segmentations. Because in nature, I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, okay, what's strong that's long? Your vertebrae is segmented. A centipede is segmented. So to me, that's biomimicry that worked for me. How does a bird, how does a fish, how do they solve their problems? And how do other humans? And you just kind of keep poking around and try to learn from others and learn from other people, or learn from animals, learn from your environment. And I found that, and again, just even in doing that, you're probably disconnected from the media unless you're researching it. But even there, you're going down a path on the internet that you're exploring something, you're engaging your mind. It's very proactive. You're not just passively watching a screen. So I don't know if that helps, but you have to, again, just write your problems down. I mean, I used to say, I'm more into problems and solutions. What are your problems? Give me a problem to solve. I want to try it. And a lot of things, the other thing is, a lot of the great breakthroughs in science are from people outside their field. So they put a chemist with a physicist, and the chemist might have a better view of the physicist's problem because the physicist has his blinders on. They've been taught, do this, do this, do this, only this way. And the chemist might come in from a different perspective. So that's why it's good sometimes to ask other people what problems they have, because they may be too close to it. It's very rewarding. And a lot, inventing is rewarding, and just for the sake of inventing. To become financially lucrative from it, that's a whole other story. And that's a long shot. I mean, it's really hard to become a successful inventor. There's just no doubt about it. That's why my overall saying to all inventors is, don't quit your day job. Don't quit even as good as your invention looks, don't quit it. Don't quit your day job, your 9-to-5 job, until you have enough money coming in from your invention. And an invention can be art, poetry, music. It can be starting a company, anything innovative. Invention is pure creativity, but innovation is modifying things and making them better. So that there's all sorts of invention or innovation. And again, don't do it on the side. And, I think that's really important, because there's too much pressure. You got to pay your bills. And if things take, I used to say twice as long and twice as much money. I'm now saying 10 times as long and 10 times as much money to get something completed. And I don't know if you remember the tortoise and the hare, that I'm the ultimate tortoise. Okay. Yeah. I'm playing the long game, even with the streamer. I've been working on the streamer I thought of it 40 years ago. I mean, wow. It's been, so it's like, and I got the military approvals like 20 years ago, so the initial ones, and I'm still doing it, and I'm not going away. Yeah. You have to show people perseverance and stick to it. So you're like, I'm not going away. And even if I get setbacks, again, if you have the day job paying your bills, you can keep going on the side and keep building things and not rush it. It's just anything worth doing takes a long time and a lot of work. And that's something of the mindset you have to change in people that want to do it easily. Everyone, I wrote a book about inventing, and I started giving talks, and I got really disillusioned because people thought I could hear this guy talk and buy his book in an hour, and I have my invention, I'm going to be a millionaire. It doesn't work that way. It's not like that at all. So I stopped doing that. I don't want to, falsely encourage inventors how easy of a path it is. It's not at all. That's why it should only be a hobby, really. It should only be a hobby. If your hobby takes off, hallelujah.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because I think there's not enough people talking about the behind the scenes. I think you've mentioned a couple of things. I think having a day job to support whatever your invention is supportive. Exactly what you were saying. And I think in my mind, it also creates space for creativity, because you're not stressing about, I've got to pay these bills, right, or I need to look after my general well-being. you can go, that's being taken care of by this. And now I can, any spare energy, brain energy, you can invest it into your invention or your business, whatever it is that you're creating.
Exactly. And I'm a strong proponent of jumping around. I know it's kind of scattered, but if you're stuck on one problem, go to another problem. So if you have a day job, you're leaving your hobby invention all the time. So when you come back to it, you have fresh eyes. I think that's really useful, because if you get stuck in something, you need to get a change of scenery. And sometimes you don't know how the inspiration comes. And when I do outreach to kids, one of my lines is, if you're laughing, you're learning. And it's the same thing. If there's no pressure on you, you're much more receptive to being creative or even learning, or just having things come in, instead of being stressed out and mad and angry. So when I do outreach to kids and adults, I try to make it funny, and it's a good time. We're having a good time here. You want to be, especially if you're going to be an inventor and you want to invent something, you better make sure what you're working on, you have a passion, because you're going to be living and breathing it ultimately. So it can't be something you hate and you're just doing it to make some money. That's okay, but that's a much harder road, because the long hours and the frustrations, you got to have passion, and you have to really be committed to it. And I think that failure is inevitable, little failures. And I used to tell my kids, I tell them now, but I told them when they're little, I used to root for them to have small failures. I think all kids, all these parents are like doing too much for their kids, helicopter parents and what do they call it, other snowplow parents. They're clearing the path so it's really easy. That's bad. I want kids to fall. And my whole thing, the other thing that I used to say is ignore and distract. That was my big line with parenting, which is ignore bad behavior and distract it. Because it's like a kid falls down and don't look at them. When they fall and hurt themselves, don't look at them. If you look, then they'll cry. If you don't look, and then ultimately, if they come up to you and I'll say, oh, that looks bad, we got to go to the emergency room and get a shot. Oh, I'm okay. Give them, I very much believe in not lying to them, but giving them the straight dope, the straight facts. Oh, that doesn't look bad, or that looks bad. We got to go, don't pull punches. And I never really did. I don't know, maybe my kids, I'm sure they're tweaked a little because I am their father. So that's a tweakage in itself, but I raised them a little differently. So it's more down to earth, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with the little kids thing and them falling over or them hurting themselves, because they always look to you to see your reaction.
Right.
And I remember doing with my nephews when they were younger. They're a little bit, they're 7, 8 and 5.
Right.
So, they're boys. They climb on stuff, and I had to hold myself back from going, don't do that, be careful, because when they're walking on fences, like, I can foresee what may potentially happen when they're trying to jump and grab a tree branch.
Exactly.
And then you've got to find that fine line where you sort of give them that leeway to give it a go, and if they fall, hurt themselves, then they'll be okay.
If you do the plus when you're little, you're rubbery, so kids can they can fall. The only human that's survived going over Niagara Falls, the big waterfall, without being in a barrel or something, is a baby, because the baby went over in a life jacket, but they bounce. They're rubbery and they're bounced. So if I fall 20 feet, I'm going to get hurt. If a kid falls 20 feet, he'll probably be fine, he or she.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing for adults. If people are your colleagues are doing stupid things, or you got to ignore and distract it. Distract them from some bad behavior, or ignore it, or just kind of diminish it, but let people do their own thing. You don't want to really micromanage other people. And you kind of, I try to change the subject, kind of steer them in a better way. I mean, it's not my place for adults, but when they were my kids, I had license to do it.
Yeah, totally. My nephew today, I was dropping them to school, and on the way back, the older one, he said to me, they've got an athletics carnival coming up, and he goes, Auntie Monty, do you think I should try the hurdles? And I said, yeah. Have you done it before? He goes, no. And I said, yeah, give it a go. You might like it, you might not, you might fall over, you might not, you might love it. And he goes,
exactly.
Yeah. And An interesting experience to have with him and watch him choose to go and try something new. I said, you should always try something new.
And try it on. See if it fits, whether it's clothing or an activity or anything. Try it on. And the worst thing you can say is, oh, it doesn't work for me, move on. But you tried. I mean, even in inventing, I mean, one of the things that I didn't want to be on my deathbed going, I should have tried to work this streamer invention more. I'm like, no, I'm going for it. If I don't make it, I don't care. I went for it. And most inventors are frustrated. They're a little delusional. Like, I had that $1 million idea, but someone else came up with it. That's fine. But I mean more like really give it a go. Really try a new business or a new book you're going to write. Just try it. And again, I think you should be inventing and creating for the audience of one, ultimately, yourself. Right? So if I invent something that works for me, that's a victory. If it becomes a commercial item, that's great too. But, you can't go for home runs only. I mean, I shoot, when I come with an idea, I want to go all the way. But because I have delusions of grandeur, if it only becomes a single or double, an analogy in baseball, that's still good too. I don't get a home run all the time, but if it works a little, that's good. And again, the smallest level of working is giving you satisfaction that you came up with it and solved the problem or created something that's useful or something that you wrote that someone read and likes. I mean, that's valuable too. It's all baked in there of just giving it a try, just like your nephew with the hurdles. I mean, I'm sure whether he liked it or not, he put it to bed. I tried it, didn't like it, or I tried it, I'm going to be the next world-class hurdler. But try it.
Exactly.
Give it a go.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about the sea rescue. You said you had the idea 40 years ago. Tell me, how did you even come to start thinking about this idea?
Yeah, it's just a crazy story. But I was a grad student. I came here to work on volcanoes, and another grad student rented a plane, and we flew to Kauai, another island. And it was a rented plane, a little Cessna. And it sounded horrible since it was a rental. I don't know if they did the maintenance on it. So this plane, we're in this tiny plane, and Hawaii is really windy, beautiful trade winds, all this blue water. And it's kind of sputtering a little. I'm like, this doesn't sound good. And I look down, and all you see is that blue water like that for miles. I'm like, if we go down, this thing's made out of metal, it's going to sink. And I'm a good swimmer, but my late wife who was on the plane, and he and his girlfriend, they're going to all die because they can't swim 3 miles in. I might be able to. I might not be able. But then I'm like, and then I knew they had smoke signals, flares, sea dye marker, and little electronic devices. I knew what was out there, being a fisherman boater from my whole life. But then a few weeks later, have you heard of the artist Christo? He does big global art. Yeah, he like those umbrellas across Japan. But I grew up in Miami, and I flew back to Miami for a visit 2 weeks after that experience in the airplane, and he had done this art installation in Miami. He wrapped pink plastic around these islands in Miami. So when I flew over that pink plastic, I'm like, that's it. If I had a big pink plastic tail, they could see us. And it took me years to figure out the spreader bars, to make it like a centipede. But that was the nucleus of the idea, was the fact that someone else's art inspired me while I was in a plane looking at nature or being in nature after I got afraid of nature in another plane. So it's always, to me, about being in the elements and being close to dying. And that's why I've gone into this whole inventing survival gear. But it was such a weird experience. And then when I realized it's so simple to have a piece of plastic behind you, it's like, it's continuous. Like a flare, smoke, or die just goes away right away. This thing lasts forever. And if the enemy in the military, if the enemy comes around, you want to hide, you can pull it in and then redeploy it. So the Navy, when they first approved it, said it's the only passive and continuous signaling device that can be redeployable. So even to this day, I had some submarine escape guys here from Europe the other day, and I was telling them about it. It's really, if they don't know about it and you tell them, it's just like, wow, that's so simple. It's so obvious. And, the last 20, 30 years, I've been trying to convince people how obvious this is and how it should be everywhere. And it is everywhere in small numbers, not huge numbers. Certain air forces have it on all their flight jackets. It's on new F-16s. It's on SpaceX. The astronauts have it in their seat kits under them. So it's all over. And it's great, but it really should be really all over. It should be on every life raft, every life jacket, every flight jacket, every hiking backpack. It works on land too. There's a picture of it on the mountain. Same problem. If you get lost in the mountain, you can't, the whole thing, it all stems from the fact that your head is tiny from the air.
Yeah.
You know, if you go like this, and I started doing the research, and people that were lost at sea, if they lived through it, they always said the same thing. Why'd you fly over me 3 times? Why didn't you see me? And the answer is you're a little speck. You're like a coconut floating in the water. Whereas an orange piece of plastic, a straight line of orange, that's totally not found in nature. Something is down there. So it's really, again, it's such a simple device. And because it was so simple, the patents were very strong, because it's hard to make it work without those spreader bars. And it's such a simple device, as opposed to inventing a piece of electronic equipment that you could just design around. You know, it's really hard to design around this. So that helped. And then having all these military tests and approvals over the years give it another layers of credibility and protection, because now it's in the U.S. government system where people can buy it just reciting a number, and it has patents, military approvals, and you have trademark the name. You kind of build up your barriers to entry. So if someone wants to compete, they have to jump all these hoops that you've already jumped through. So it was a long road, and it's still going, you know. But it took years. That's why I like to say 30 years. It took a year. You know, I thought of it in 1985. Okay, you weren't even alive.
Wow.
Fine. So it's like,
yeah.
So but it didn't come on the market till the 90s. You know, it took years. You know, I was doing other things. I was finishing my PhD, but still, it was the classic tortoise and the hare. And even now, it's all over, and I've done some great things with it. But I'm still grinding. I'm still trying to get it more adopted even further. I'm still as passionate, but I don't get as disappointed as I used to. Like, wow, I can't believe you're not going to buy it. And now my whole thing is, if you don't like it, okay, well, it's your loss. You don't want to be found. You want to die lost at sea or lost in the mountains. That's your call.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been
I mean, it's so brilliant.
Thank you. It's just simple, though. I mean, some of the best inventions, I think a kid could have thought of this. A kid could have thought of this idea. And I worked with this other inventor, and he invented a smoke in the cockpit system, and it was basically an inflatable balloon that enables you to see through the smoke to your to your cockpit instruments and see out the window to fly a plane. Every kid's picked up a balloon and looked through a balloon.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so that was brilliant. And again, a 10-year-old could have thought of that, just like a 10-year-old could have thought of the streamer. And I don't say that as a put down. That to me is a compliment. If you're an older person or an adult that still has the capacity to be so creative that you can think like a child or think in the simplest possible way with the least amount of materials, the least way it could fail, that's a good thing. That's why you got to keep those creativity juices flowing. And it's harder as you get older. I mean, if you look at famous people, even musicians, artists, writers, most of their great work is done when they're young. You know, not to discourage older people, because older people can do things, but, you know, just look at Beethoven was like a 12-year-old. You know, the genius stuff, Bob Dylan, he was 20 years old. When all this great stuff comes out of people, they're usually really young. So I'm not saying I don't have a fountain of youth, but if you can somehow perpetuate a youthful mindset, that's of great value in the creative world. So I'm not sure how you do it. But.
Do you think that, well, I think a key part of it, as we're just like exploring this right now, it comes down to that kids don't necessarily think about the failure, whereas adults, we think of all the reasons why something might not work.
Right.
Or sometimes we can be passionate about something and then we take our idea to somebody else and they're like, oh no, that'll never work.
Right.
And the problem there can be that we take that on board and go, oh, I can't do that.
Exactly.
Whereas kids kind of have that, I'm going to do this anyway approach.
Exactly. And it doesn't hurt them when they fail. They quickly move on to something else. The attention span is so short, and you don't take it as personally. Now it's caught up. But when I was a kid, the girls were always smarter than the boys till about 12 or 13. And then the whole hormone teenage thing stopped. And somehow women back then were taught not to be so smart and leaders. It's changed now. Women have kind of flipped it, which is great. Totally for it. But it's the same thing with kids. You can't, the failure, you want to be a leader, you want to be kind of resilient, and you have to have confidence in yourself and your ideas. And that's why, it's easy to find naysayers. And that's also what's so dangerous about social media, because everyone's sitting around and everyone's a great critic and tell you what's wrong with something, or you have yes people that just tell you, oh, that's great, it's great, it's great. Neither of those are good. I mean, they have their own value. The one thing I used to do with the streamers, I used to ask all sorts of people what they thought of it. The person making me a bean burrito, what do you think of this? Or a friend, a scientist friend, or a military friend. I want all the input, bad and good. Now, when I'm advanced, so when I got it on Shark Tank, when I got in front of all those people and 9 million people are seeing it, all these famous sharks are coming after me, I've already heard all the negative stuff you could say. You're not going to stump me. You're not going to say something new. And if you are, I'm used to thinking about new things. Oh, that's a good idea. I have a way to deflect it and come up with a reason why I think it's this way or that way, or just accept it. That's a good criticism. I was taught as a kid, we used to sit around the table and argue all the time, my family. And, it sounds bad, but it was good. It was like, it was debate. Let's call it debate. So we're debating on this or that. Yeah. And then in my friends in the neighborhood, we did that all night. We kind of made fun of each other. It was always a debate, argument, and you get a hardened shell to where you can take criticism. And in the old days, we called it constructive criticism. Yeah. So, it's not always constructive, but at least you have to be able to handle criticism, because if you're a creator and you can't, then you just have to be out and not talk to anyone and do something and launch it and then never read what anyone says about it, but that's not as realistic. You're going to encounter people along the way that say, well, I don't like this, or this is, and I've encountered people, they laughed at me for this. The military laughed at me for years with the streamer. And then one guy in the Coast Guard said, oh, this is a good idea. I'd like to see this. Yeah, it was like, they still kind of laugh at me a little, but now it's just so much more mature and accepted. But that didn't come easy. That's years of, battling people that just dismiss it. And they actually thought it was going to go away. Oh, that's like the cute idea. Even Shark Tank, I showed it to them and I unfurled it and they're going, oh, that's a good idea. And they're going, oh, you got any sales? Have you had any sales? And I'm already like 20 years into this. I said, yeah, $15 million. And they almost fell off their seats because they thought it was like a college creativity experiment. So it's funny how people receive things. And if you have some success, people are followers. They're not leaders. So there's a bandwagon. So if the U.S. Navy likes something, oh, then I should like it. It's like people don't, and it's fine. And that's what I tried to build up. And I have all the militaries have approved it. And that's great. I keep building credibility. And even in the using the media, I use the media to build the whole company. My brother, who's an advertising guy, taught me that you need to talk to writers for magazines and video and see they're always looking for something to write. So you got to pitch your story. So I used to send it out on a fax 100 different places at once. It's like fishing. You put 100 lines out, you catch one fish. Then if it leads to an article on it, you put that article out and say, hey, look what everyone's writing about. You should write about it too. And I'm kind of a polite pain. I'm a polite pain in the ass. If I want something from you, I'll keep nicely, politely bugging you. It took me 3 years to get an outside magazine. So because I kept persevering, and it's a lost art, but it's something you have to keep working for credibility. And again, people are followers. So if it's on SpaceX, it must be great. Or if the Navy uses it, it must be great. But it saves some lives. That's great. All these credibility, you're building a whole fortress of power, of acceptance. And it's hard when you're starting something new. This is a new category too. No one had done streamers. They've done flares, smoke, and this is a totally new category. It's a challenge.
Especially when it's a new category. Did you have any moments where you thought, oh, I'm just going to throw in the towel, I can't do this?
It caused me to stop for a while, but they never caused me to quit completely. My late wife used to say, stop playing with that piece of plastic and get a real job. There were points in my life that were financially challenged. My wife got sick with multiple sclerosis and she got paralyzed, and her last 19 years were in a wheelchair, and we had little kids. So the pressure to produce money and my time was so huge. But I kept thinking, you can kind of ignore it for now, but don't let, and I have all these other inventions, a desalinator, a pocket flotation device, inflatable rescue boards. But this was the one that kept coming back. And even if I had to leave it for a while and quit it for a while, I knew I'll get back to that because I know it's the right answer. I know it's the right solution. And again, basically not quitting your day job and leaving it, but don't leave it completely, and that being the tortoise versus the hare helped me. And even when I was on Shark Tank and after, people always offer me money to invest it, but everyone that wants to invest wants to make money right away. But it's not like that. You have to build it slowly, and you have to. If it's a business you want to build for life, it has to fit your life. And if you have investors, all of a sudden you have partners, and they might tell you to go move from Hawaii or go to this trade show or travel half your life. I don't want to do those things, So it's like you have to really have the passion to do it, and the perseverance is the main thing. I mean, I don't think there's a word better that describes my experience with this. It's been tough, but rewarding. It's really rewarding.
You said that, yeah, I was actually going to ask you what's the most rewarding part of having invested your time, your energy, your passion into this?
The most rewarding by far was having a military guy come up to me at a trade show and say, this thing worked. It saved my life. And that was great. And that's what I tried to get across to the sharks. Is like, we can save, I've already saved a handful of lives. We can save thousands, tens of thousands of lives. And the shock to me was they're so into money, they didn't care. That was a shock to me. But that was the most rewarding part for me to actually, because, people have jobs and they do paperwork jobs or jobs that don't matter, but to actually make a contribution that saves someone or helps someone, to me, that's valuable. And I even like teaching, which is really has a bad name. To me, teachers should be paid the most because they should be inspiring the humans in the world. And the way they're looked down upon, I always thought that was backwards. I think, if you're entrusted to inspire and teach children or adults, that should be the highest level. And it used to be. Teachers used to be revered. And for me, inventing a piece of life-saving technology that actually saves lives, that's what it's all about. And even when I was in academia, after my PhD, I'm like, what am I going to do? And I could have been a professor somewhere and just been a teacher, and that's cool. But I always felt like applied science is better because, I worked on ocean floor lavas, and we understood the composition of this ocean floor and understand the lavas coming from the mantle and a magma chamber. But only a couple hundred people care. It's really pure science. Whereas what I'm doing now has the potential to help people that don't even know that it's there yet, right? It's something much bigger. So I always felt like that's more rewarding to go for something that really helps people. And I think I've definitely found it with the streamer. So, I mean, my other ideas haven't gone that far, but I'm not giving up yet. I've got a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah,
and
that's
never,
beautiful.
Yeah, never stop.
No.
And the other thing is as you get older, you have to...
Yeah, you can definitely feel
It's hard. It's hard to keep it going. But again, if you have the passion, that's why it's so important to pick a career or a hobby that you have passion about. And if your day job is boring, pick a good
Mm,
hobby. You know what I'm saying? So you can get through the boring day job. You have to have passion about something, and ideally, it's your work. That's why it's been
yeah.
easy for me, really. And it's been hard the whole
Yeah.
time, but the main reward at the end of the road I knew was good. And even I remember one time early on, that first article that was written about it, my former in-laws, they were not that impressed with my lifestyle choices. I didn't make enough money. You're so smart, you got a PhD in science. How come you're not making a ton of money? But then the Miami Herald wrote about this and how it's going to save lives. The Navy likes it. And their whole philosophy changed when their high-level friends told them, hey, that son-in-law you got is really smart. He came up with this technology that's going to save people. So it's funny how things switch around when you have different levels of credibility forced upon people. And it's just a wild thing. It's just so the rewards have come in all sorts of ways. But
Mm,
the positive reinforcement is people appreciate the idea, appreciate the simplicity. It's inspiring to other inventors that you can invent something simple and deliver, a good product that's worthwhile. It's not just to make money. I never wanted to invent something just to make money. To me, that's a disconnect. And that's okay. You can start a business just to make money. That's fine.
yeah.
But to me, the ultimate levels of being an inventor, and
Mm.
I don't know if you ever heard of the book Thick Face, Black Heart. It's based on the art of war, and it's based on thick
No,
face
I
means
haven't.
yeah, it's really cool. This woman wrote it based on the art of war, and it's like a business book. And the idea of thick face meaning don't listen to people putting you down, and black heart means you go to win in war. And if you have to, you kill your opponent in war. But the highest levels of achievement is to achieve
Mm,
it without killing anyone and achieve it by doing something that's admirable. So that's kind of where I feel like I've come, which is I've
mm.
gone for created this thing, but it's something I didn't have to kill anyone, and it doesn't kill anyone. It saves people. So it's the opposite. So it's a better invention that hasn't come out yet. I'm still working on, which is a pocket desalinator that converts salt water to fresh water just by putting it in the
Mm-hmm.
sun. So I made a really cool, simple device, and it only makes a quarter cup of water a day. If it can make a liter a day, and that'll save the whole world. The future wars are going to be fought over water. Fresh water is the thing that's going to be, forget
Mm.
oil. The battles now are about oil. Future battles are going to be on fresh water. So if you have a way to give third world
Yeah.
developing nations people water, or a hurricane hits and there's no drinkable water, but you can pour polluted or salt water in a bag,
Mm.
put it in the sun, and then drink it. That's pretty powerful. So, and I think I met a guy that can finally build it the way I envision it should be built. I'm not a plastics heat sealing expert, but I found one that hopefully
Mm-hmm.
we can get there. But I'm still, this is stuff I think about.
Yeah. I love
So,
it. It's very creative and interesting, and yeah, it sounds like another great invention, I think. Yeah, it's been awesome. We'll finish off with the leaders lane sprint, just 4 quick fire questions.
okay.
So my first question for you is, what's one of the best experiences you've had in life?
By far, going down 2 miles in a submarine to the bottom of the ocean. There was nothing. It was like going to the moon. It was so remote, and 2 hours to get down, 4 on the bottom, weird creatures, phosphorescent, glow in the dark. By far, that's the winner. Close second is live volcanoes and wildlife like tigers or lions in Africa or India. But by far, the submersible is the one.
Yeah, amazing. And what's one thing that you would like to attempt before you die? If you can pick one.
Well, I mean, I think I've tried to do all the things. And I tell people this and they think I'm an asshole, but I used to have this list of places I wanted to do and things I wanted to do, and I kind of got them all. So what I'm trying to do is just replicate them. Like surfing, I surf really big waves, and I keep doing it. My goal is to keep doing it till I'm really old. So that's where I am now. But I love travel, and I'd like to go to Antarctica. Maybe that would be cool. There's some volcanoes in Antarctica. I wouldn't mind seeing a volcano erupt while you're on the South Pole. I don't know if I answered your question,
Wow,
but
it's awesome.
thanks.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And tell me, what or who brings out your best?
Well, nature, by far. Nature is my inspiration, and music. I mean, so I just love being in nature. I always have been as a kid. You know, I used to wake up at 5 in the morning. My parents drove the whole family crazy, so they would just throw me outside. And I just found solace there. I'm a big Emerson and Thoreau, the writers, on Walden Pond or Self-Reliance. Being in nature is it for me. I mean, that's my inspiration. And then, of course, the creative people, the music and writers. I love Bob Dylan. I mean, his music and just writers. I love the classic writers. I love reading and music, when I have time, but really it's still nature. And I kind of, to me, nature is music. When you're out there, and even when I go out in the boat, my son, he's got a boat now and he has a stereo on it. He plays music. And I'm like, turn that off. I want to hear the wind and the birds. It's such a disruption to put some loud music. Whether the music's good or bad, I don't want to hear that. When you're going deep in nature, you should not have electronics.
I know. It brings it back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Absolutely.
And my final question for you is, what did you enjoy most about our conversation?
I just liked the way it went all over, and we kind of explored things kind of unscripted. So I like the way that we connected on the same level, and you prompted me to think of stuff I haven't thought about in a while and try to verbalize it to understand, to explain it to you or make my thoughts. I really enjoy meeting people that I've never met and hearing questions or input or responses, like a virgin audience. It's like sometimes when I meet people, or even this format, they'll say, I'll send you the question. I don't want to know the questions. And I also want to explore how you think. What's your brain like? What that to me is very rewarding. And I like the way you think. You've got a good live wire mind. And it's exciting to see that people still have good minds like that. And that was the best part of this, is that when I said something, it prompted you to think of something related but different. And it's a nice back and forth. So that's what I like best. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say I very much enjoyed our conversation, and
Same here.
Even at the beginning I was thinking, I'm like, this is why I love doing my podcast,
Absolutely.
just connecting with new people and just seeing, I just think there's so much richness in that human connection.
Absolutely.
And just hearing people that are passionate about what they do. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. And again, as much as I bash technology, the ability to talk to you in Australia while I'm in Hawaii and have pretty good connection, it's pretty amazing. So I really do like technology for that. But thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks again.
All right. Take care.